we will be recording. Okay, great. So it said 6 people participated. Let me just take a look at that. Participants, no, 5 people, good. So we are in the second of 3 prakim about Tzor. Tzor is Tyre, Tyre is Phoenicia. And what we're going to do is, we may read 1 to 2 psukim period in it. We'll talk about the psukim, we'll talk about what they deal with. It's a long parak, and the parak is a list. It's a list of the luxury items and components of various things that Tzor traded in. And if any of you have your phones handy, you can take a look at 2 things. David most recently sent a map, and the map, if you open it up and make it larger, will tell you not only the trade partners of Tzor, but the products for which they traded. And I'll tell you now, and you can take a look, you can make the map small again and take a look at the expanse of its trade route. It was ridiculous.
You know, if you look at
We're
the
saying
pink,
that we said last week is credited by some. Go ahead, David.
the pink writing, if you read it, it's an incredible amount of what a variety.
Yes.
And they went all the way to Spain.
Yep.
And around to Northern Africa. I mean, it is crazy.
They're credited with having invented the boat, ship. I mean, you want to talk about taking an invention to the max. Like David said, you know, we may have been traveling around at that time in rickshaws, and these guys are going around in rocket ships, you know, relative to the times. That's it's a lot of traveling. And I'll tell you now that I used Rav Steinsaltz, Sechet Salz the Bracha's fabulous Nevi'im. I have his Nevi'im in Hebrew, and I also have them in the New English Steinsaltz Nevi'im. And you can buy this set now on sale at what's called again Koren for about, I don't know, $45, $48. It's all Nevi'im in 1 volume. But if you'll take a look at what I've done over here, you will see I have highlighted. Can you guys make anything out? Colors? Okay, I have highlighted orange and green. Orange would be the names of the places. Green would be the products. And I then did an inventory. Maybe my counting isn't so good, but Kim Dumani, that there are 35 trade partners and 45 either products or groups of products. Why I say by groups of products says, and all the spices, all of this, all of that. So that's not one thing. That could be 250 things in that category. We're talking about just a wealth, would be a good word, of commerce. Now, why the metaphor of the boat, which is what this is? The metaphor is we are describing a vessel, maybe for lack of a better term, a container ship. And all the components that it has that make up the structure of the boat, the different materials, the different woods. And then it talks about what they got, materials from where, and what was given in exchange. That's this parak. Now, I looked at a medrash, and I got the medrash in the book Torah Shebial Peth, and he says, Yehuda Reb Simon says, Malchus umos ha'olam nimshala bisfina. He says, the nations, the royalty, the rulership of the nations of the world like a boat. Masfina zu ein kol atseha achas, or eitseha. He says, this boat it does not only have one type of wood. Ella yesh ba eitzim mikama minin. There's several varieties. I'd say arozim, cedars. I'd say pasidon. I couldn't tell you what that is. Might be juniper. I'd say idron. It says kach umos ha'olam. He says hein uma v'sarim shalahem. A nation and its officers, its military, me uma acheres. So the chain, he says, as atamotze bitzor, you'll find here, shlo you kol sareha mimena. The people who are its officers were not necessarily Taurian or Tyrian, as we would say, or Phoenician. El mikamim komos. He says, with Mishalan hakosur bisvina. So apparently they come from different nations, different nationalities, and if you read it, if you take the time and read the Psukim, talk about, well, we got those who did the caulking on the boat, so wouldn't spring leaks from here. We got Chachamim for navigation from here. We got this from that, this from that. Different people, different expertise from different places. It was a real global effort. So you may ask, why? Why is it a global effort? Because everybody benefited. Tsar is in the middle. Tsar, Phoenicia, Tyre is a middleman. But that middleman was responsible for bringing commerce throughout the world. And consequently, when they went down, when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed them, nations of the world mourned because it was never going to be the same. Now, Rabbi, there are a number of people who give a very good introduction to it. The original English article says, Yechezkel would not have been Ben Adam, son of mankind, qualified to show new paths of life to all humanity if the downfall of mighty Tyre had not drawn from him a heart-stirring lament. In other words, what kind of a mensch are you if you don't feel for the other guy? The answer is you wouldn't be a Jewish mensch. Said, had all this power and glory been achieved at such great cost, only be swept away in an instant by the waves of the raging sea? When our sages say that, quote, unlike the prophets of other nations who concern themselves only with the fate of their compatriots, the prophetic spirit of Israel serves the purposes of God's compassion for Israel and for all the other nations they were thinking of. Yechezkel's lament at the fall of Tyre. Now, actually, I was reading from Dr. Breuer, and he continues, he says, the Navi contemplates Tsor, whose geographic location had provided the most favorable conditions for that city to become the center of the mercantile nations of the ancient world. And believing that she had attained the pinnacle of perfection, if you open up to Psukim Gimel and Dalet, you'll see a term in there. This is the pieces of Psukim I want you to see. He says, Ko Amar Hashem Elokim, it's after the Asnachta. Tsor at Omart Andi Klilas Yofi. And he says, God says, you have said, here I am standing in the perfection of beauty. And I guess any bad statement said once is worth repeating. The next pasuk says, Belev Yamin Gvulayach, your territories lie in the heart of the seas. Bonayach Kolalu Yofyech. Your builders shaped your beauty to perfection. Why are those fighting words? Those are fighting words because it says in the Otzer HaMidrashim, in a medrash that is quoted from Shmos Rabbah, it says, what does it mean, at omart? It says, you said. We're quoting and saying, we say that you said, Tsor. Ella klomar, to mean, at omart, you said it, la'acherim, einam omrim, not everybody else is saying it. Zavol Yerushalayim, hakol omrim shivcha. everyone praises it. Shenemar, it says in Echa, Hazos ha'ir sheyomru kalilas yofi. You want to start comparing things and calling yourself the pinnacle of beauty. You don't mess with God's city, is what Yerushalayim is. So it says, now, let's take a second to look at all these various different maps that we have. You have them all, I believe, on your phone. We looked at the one that David sent us. Now, I sent you a different one. Look at the first map. The first map with red lines shows you the trade routes where they go around, and it's impressive. If you take a look at Tsar, Tsar is on the right side of your map, this speck. It's a speck. It's literally just a speck in the ocean. And take a look at its reach, where it goes. Every place, Sardinia, Carthage, Tangier, Iberia is Spanish Peninsula. It's every place. That's the first map. Now, if you take a look at the next map, which is one red circle, which shows you Tsar, and you'll see it if you enlarge it with your fingers, if you spread it out, it shows you the nations which are all mentioned within the Perek that it did business with. And you can see how many there were. But okay, that's great. They do with a lot of nations. But if you take a look at the last map that I sent, I have highlighted in yellow the names of the products that they dealt with and where they got them from. And if you take a look at this map, I mean, we're talking about an expanse of, I'm thinking hundreds of miles, the reach with which they traded. And if you care to see it, and David's map actually gives you in English, if you spread it out and open it up, it'll tell you the types of products in pink. It says Taurus, he says, is wine, he said, glass, metalwork, textiles, timber, gold, slaves, slave trade, all of these things. So you'll take my word for it. There are 45 categories of goods, and those 45 categories can encompass hundreds of products from 35 trade partners. And it says that the trade partners within the Pesukim did their trading because it was mutually beneficial. We got this, we gave this. So this was a world mercantile system. And David, I know you looked into anything you want to say and jump in, please feel free. Now, what I want to tell you is there is, I found a little paragraph which describes the metaphor of the boat and what it's all about in Tova Ganzel's book. She says, the boat and its demise. It's one paragraph. In chapter 27, Yechezkel provides a detailed description of Tyre as a ship at sea with sophisticated equipment, as well as military strength, which allows its trade with many countries and ensures its key position in international commerce through involvement in many different manufacturing and commercial spheres. But the description of Tyre's greatness is abruptly cut short. In a sharp reversal, which is also part of the prophetic message, Yechezkel describes the sinking of the ship of Tsar in Psukim Chav Vav and Chav Zayin, and this, the lamentation of the people of Tyre who dwell on the ship and on the islands around it. The detail with which the prophet describes the power of Tsar creates a false impression. Despite the long elaboration of the prophecy, there is, in fact, a lack of clarity in Yechezkel as to the state of Tsar during the years of the destruction. We don't really get detail about how it was destroyed. I mean, last week, I think I read some of the historical accounts as to what happened, the creation of a bridge, the breaking of the bridge, what Alexander the Great did, what the Nebuchadnezzar did. This may stem from a desire to separate the written prophecy from its concrete historical or political context, thereby conveying a timeless message. If anybody knows what that means, you can kind of let me know, because I have no idea what that means. But I'll tell you something that I found extremely interesting. And of all people, written by a guy by the name of Lydia Lee. Lydia Lee writes in her Mapping Judah's Fate in Ezekiel's Oracles Against the Nations. She says on page 87, she calls these keynote dirges. The first dirge in Yechezkel 27 compares Tyre to a powerful, magnificent merchant ship. Following the brief introduction of Tyre's location in the middle of the sea and its trade, she says, Yud-K Vav-K YHWH explains, O Tyre, you have said, I am perfect in beauty. And she has in good Hebrew, Sor at amart ani klilat yofi. This boasting is surprisingly not negated. In fact, the text is eager to pay homage to Tyre's beauty by placing the affirmation of Tyre's beauty in Hashem's mouth. Hashem says, you said. Well, we already said, you said, but not everybody else agreed. Employing the combination of the roots Kalel and Yafeh in Pasuk Dalet, Hashem testifies that the Tyrian builders and mercenaries from various countries aid to perfect the beauty of Tyre. As if one repetition is not enough, Hashem affirms this beauty yet again in Pasuk Hey, Kilelo Yafeh Yafyech. The combination of Yafeh and Kolel, Chof Lamed Lamed, thus builds, he says, an inclusio, some kind of Latin thing, for the first section of the Kiddah, alerting the reader to the interior beauty of the Tyrian merchant ship. In the next section, the key word Tarshish, which is a place, forms another inclusio, outlining Tyre's external relationship with the trading partners from all around the world. Tyre's trading partners come from a vast region that extends from Yavan, Tuval, Meshech in the northwest, to Haran, Aden, and Ashur in the northeast, bringing luxury goods into Tyre. These partners further augment its perfect beauty. After the two sections that elaborately describe the glory and splendor of the Tyrian ship, the verbs in 5 move, he says, Vatimal-i, Vatich bidi, move the dirge into the third section. Here the ship encounters its sudden demise, and many lament the lost beauty of Tyre. So we have a catalog of luxury items. We have a long list of trading partners. We have reciprocal benefits. And then, I mean, it's only fitting that its mercantile empire was based on sea. And after all, they were an island or a peninsula, depending upon who built the bridge and how long it lasted, that they sunk in the sea. And with it sinking in the sea, there's a lamentation of the majesty of the powerful nation going down the tubes and the loss of all this good stuff. And actually, I read, and I'm not sure where it was that I read, but it tells us that the Gemara says Hashem kept some of this stuff aside so it would be used later as materials for the base of English. Now, I'll be honest, that's really my take on the Perek. David, you got more. I know you do. So let me hear.
I don't have much more. I just like, we've been talking about Yechezkel's poetry all along. And sometimes the poetry had to do with his using the same word, run on kind of sense with the same word or similar words and a sound that's repeated and so on. In this case, I think he shifts his poetry to images and the power of description. It's kind of almost like the shock of the Titanic sinking. Here he builds a picture.
The unsinkable ship.
It builds a picture of this empire that is so far advanced beyond everyone else. Not only are they advanced, but the whole world depends on them. How could they possibly be destroyed? Hashem says, you're just going to sink. That's it. I mean, the imagery is stark and it is scary because of, you read this, you see all the whole world. It's the center of the whole world. How can it possibly be blown apart? And it is. I find it a very creative and unique Perek, just by his power of description like that. It's a slow, kind of subtle building, one after another. And then all of a sudden it's just destroyed. I find it a very exciting Perek.
I'm going to give you a short list of the products. The nations really, they're ancient nations of which, we talk about Yisrael and Yehuda in there. We talk about Yavan in there, nations we recognize, but many we don't. Listen to the products: juniper, cedar, oak, ivory, boxwood, linen, sky blue and purple. Let's see, silver, iron, tin, and lead. Human beings, slaves, bronze vessels, horses, horsemen, regular and fine horses, mules. And then we have horns of ivory and ebony. Alternatively, Steinthal says, where it says ivory and ebony, it says peacocks. Another way of translating it, which I thought was fascinating. Carbuncle, purple wool, embroidery, fine linen, coral, chalcedony, wheat of minit, millet, honey, oil, balm. Listen to this: massive solid blocks of iron, cassia, fragrant cane, fat lambs, rams, and goats. The choicest of every spice, every precious stone, gold, elegant garments, colorful bolts of expensive sky blue wool, embroidery, treasures of magnificent objects. That could be hundreds of things right over there. Ornaments, ornaments tied with cords and secured with your merchandise. In other words, the way this stuff was wrapped up was gorgeous. In other words, the packaging wasn't something that you were going to rip off and throw away. You want to save this packaging. So we're talking about the center of world commerce. The center of world commerce to us, big deal. It's a bigger deal? Ribono Shel Olam. Because he takes the center of world commerce and he says, sink in the ocean like a stone. And it did. And what happens? All the people who had depended upon it, traded with it, who weren't on the ship, stood on land and hung their heads in disbelief. You know what it reminded me of? I was watching a documentary on, I think it was Hulu, which to me it's the best streaming channel, about 9/11. and it had people who survived. We're not talking about people who didn't go to work that day, people who walked in and out of those buildings. Talking about the shock that is with them 20 some odd years later to see these massive World Trade Center. This was the World Trade Center, moving World Trade Center on a boat. And two Michigan, 4 or 5 or 9 Michigan Arabs slammed planes into it and it went down. And this is God's fingernail saying, it's over. It's like that. And so we have a perspective to say, madman human being can pilot planes, head them into buildings. What perspective did these non-religious people have to see their world sink? Powerful? I agree with you, David. Extremely powerful. And I don't believe in being ma'arich and going longer than necessary, but I would suggest you can read it in English and you'll see the interconnections. And then if you look back at the maps, you'll see where they came and went from, but it's like an anticlimax that it just sinks. You see, when David and I, we talked briefly about this earlier in the day, and I was saying to him, David, I've done pretty much the whole parak, and it's a list. And I said, I don't know if we really deal with destruction. The bottom line is, we talk about the end, but we talk more about the destruction in the past parak. So is that more of a vision of power? That we take a nation, God, the Navi, gives it enormous status, gives it more psukim and prakim than nearly any of the other nations that are being punished. And it's an ambivalent kind of a nation. They were with us sometimes, they were against us sometimes. And we call an end after we highlight its vitality in the ancient world, its place of tremendous importance in the world. If they didn't get their tin from here and bring it to there, there wouldn't be tin. And without tin, you can't make bronze. If you don't have this, then you can't make that. It's not that they were just end materials, they're also components and products. And then all of a sudden, maybe that is a climax when it just ends like that. So I'll just give you a few words about where we're going with the Nevi'im. Okay, we're going to deal with Egypt afterwards. We'll deal with a little bit more about other nations. We are not far from talking about one of the Haftorahs that we read over Yom Tov, Gog Magog, right here in the Sefer. We're going to talk about Gog Magog. We're going to talk about Bidyan Bayish Shlishi. We're going to talk about the Valley of the Dry Bones. All these things are here in this Navi. And in it, I think we will also derive we got some of before, I think it may creep up again, some laws of Avelus that did not exist, were not explained in the Torah. Yechezkel gets the opportunity to explain them, which is one of the reasons why this Navi was almost thought to be excluded from the canon of our Nevi'im. So there is much to look forward to, and believe it or not, a couple more prakim, and we dealt with the destruction of our people. We're dealing with the prophecies of destruction of our enemies of all different statures. We're going to deal with a worldwide destruction, and we're going to deal with the binyan bias shlishi, and all within this navi, which is a majestic navi. And I'm not familiar enough because I don't look that many pages in advance. Actually, I look no pages in advance. But we will deal with remember we said that the Shekhinah moves 10 times. We dealt with the biggest, most expansive, the most descriptive Maaseh Merkava, but I know there's more to come. So there will be more. And I was speaking with David about it, and I'll mention to you guys, since we have a little time, just tell you, I asked the question, David, yes, you were asking something.
I just want to point out that there's something a little interesting in the last psukim of the perek. Just the language. We were talking about how the other people viewed the destruction of Zor. So it says Socharim ba'amim.
Which pasuk, David?
The last pasuk Lamed Vav. Socharim ba'amim, the merchants in all the nations, shaku alayich. They whistled on you, or they made some noise. Balahot hayit. Okay, so you're destroyed and so on, and you're forever finished. But what does that mean? And there's an interesting aside that the sefer that I'm learning from, what's it called? Da'at Mikra says it means they were happy. All the enemies, the merchants were happy to see you because you were did I freeze?
But we hear you. We hear
Okay,
you.
everybody froze. The merchants were happy because their competition was destroyed. However, we know the word shaku. We've seen that.
Yes.
Shaku vayacharku shen, meaning you made noises from the mouth, you whistled and so on. We have it from Eicha. When people would walk by the old city, the destroyed city of Jerusalem, they would make these terrible noises. Shaku vayacharku shen is the pasuk. So it's an amazement. It's like you're blown away by the sight you see. It's not a happiness sound. Furthermore, why would a merchant be happy when his whole trade industry has been destroyed? So I think that in this case, Da'at Mikra may not have had it correct. If the Sochar, and he in fact then says later on, well, maybe it does mean Yitachen shizo shrikat shel timahon. Maybe it means just a whistle or a noise of amazement and wonder and disbelief rather than happiness. So that's just a cute kind of, why would a merchant be happy when the trade route is destroyed?
You're right. It's low mashma. But
yeah,
we have had that. We had that in Yeshaya. We had it in Yirmiyah, where the Navi says, people would go by to go like this.
Yeah.
What did they do to deserve this? This was God's favorite nation. How did that happen? It's just like, you can't connect the dots.
Right.
Shkayach.
Okay.
So I've been asking you guys a question. And David and I discussed it, and David made fun of me, and I love when David makes fun of me.
I didn't make
It's like
fun
this.
of you.
So I said, there are six mitzvot on Sukkot. Daled Minim, Sukkah, and Simcha. If you look at the Daled Minim, there are precise measurements. The Hadassim got to be Mishulashim, they got to be pluses of 3. The Aravos got to be this. It's got to be a minimum length. You got to make sure that the Hadassim are standing taller than the Aravos. The little spine has got to be straight. Got a minimum of this long. It's got to be fresh. the esrog's got to have bumps, it's got to have this, it's got to have that. The sukkah, if it's more than 3 inches from the floor to the wall, he says it's not going to connect with logwood. He says, how many walls do you have to have?
8:35, Marvin texted me his struggle getting on.
Well, I can't help him. Okay, Marvin had trouble getting on, but I'll refer him to the tape. But said the mitzvah simcha. What's the shiur for simcha? Go ahead. What's a shiur for simcha? What's your shiur for simcha, Dov?
I mean, I don't believe there's any share involved in there. There's no limitation.
So how do you fulfill it?
It's an individual.
Say it again.
That's an individual perception.
It's an individual.
Why is there no bracha on stucco?
You say no bracha on stucco.
Is there?
Why is there no bracha on stucco? Because it ain't no shiur. I don't
There's
know.
no shear. Yeah.
But okay. So is maaser tzedakah?
No.
I don't know.
Take a bracha when you give Ma'aseh.
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah.
No, we're talking about different types of masrim, but since there's no bracha on stucco, there is also no shiur. Tell me, it was a short shiur, and I'm going to send them
Okay.
I'll send them the link. There's also no shiur on Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim as well. So there were a number of things that don't have a shiur. So I brought it up. As I told Dave, we had a great session with Rabbi Trump last night in Mincha Mar, who was called and asked the rabbi session. The rabbi and the new assistant rabbi sat in armchairs up at the bima, and you fired questions at him. So, I said, we have so many precise measurements. I said, and you're going to tell me that for a man, it's basar v'yayin. So who does the buying? Generally the wife. What if the wife buys the wrong wine and the wrong meat? So that means the husband's not going to be happy. And so for a woman, it's going to be a dress. What if the husband wants to surprise his wife and she hates the dress? Candy. If he buys candy and the kids get a bellyache. I mean, these shiurim can misfire. So it was kind of, so the new assistant rabbi said, he said, Marvin Schenker, now he's entered the waiting room. Okay, so I'll wait to welcome Marvin. Marvin, I apologize you had such difficulty. Believe it or not, we finished this year actively about 10 minutes ago. It was short, and I will send you the link as soon as it's available. But we're going back to we talked about simcha a little bit. And so the assistant rabbi said, Rabbi Schreier, he said, he said, so many of our good times revolve around food. So it's, not outrageous. And Rabbi Trump said something that resonated with me. He said, what is a basis for our punishment? Ki lo avarata et Hashem b'tuv leiv v'simcha. Simcha b'tuv leiv. You didn't worship God joyfully. So later on, I told him there was a fabulous essay by Zecher Tzaddik Livracha, Rabbi Sachs, came back 3 weeks ago, called The Pursuit of Joy and the Difference Between Joy and Happiness. But in any event, Rabbi Trump said he believes it's really a kesher in simcha, that simcha has to be connected to an avoda, to an action. You have to elevate it to on a religious level. So he said, so that's, because it bothered me. I asked all my married children, what was simcha for them? And, it was a little bit stumping, but that to me was a very, very good answer. But in any event, I hope that all of your chagim were filled with simcha. And I hope that, I'm saying we've spent 2 months. You start with Elul, Slichos every day. Then we go into Rosh Hashanah, Saras Yemei Tshuva, Yom Kippur. We go into a Sukkot, into a Chalamot, to a Shana Rabbah, into Shmini. It's an endless connection. And you know, to me, when we finish saying L'David Hashem Ori V'Yashi, that to me is the saddest moment, because we talk about being closeted, being shielded in God's presence, which is really what Sukkah is. We just take ourselves out of the world, and we say, I trust, and it's not about me anymore. It's about the Ribono Shel Olam. It's like disconnecting from social media. So I hope all of you had a bit of that experience. I hope you got to share it with people that you loved, and I hope that you certainly ate enough, and that your davening was good, and you should all have blessed New Year's. And for Marvin, who experienced frustration getting on, I am truly apologetic. I never saw you come on till this moment. So it's the first moment I saw you, I put you on. But
I apologize. I'm just having trouble getting on.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I will send you the Shiur, which is literally, you invest a half an hour, you'll have the Shiur, and it's a fixed thought. In the second of the 3 prakim, we're dealing with Tsar, the first of the lamentations on the nation, and its place as a global trading partner. And next week, an even more remarkable lamentation about a foreign king. With that, I wish everybody a wonderful evening and a good Geben Shiur, Gmar Chsima Tova, and everything good. Thank you for being here.
And everybody else and their families
Amen.
respectively. Good night.
Good night.